Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
Welcome back, everybody. If you walk through the doors of your home, your living space, and you're not feeling that welcome, elated feeling, it's like, oh, I'm home. I can't wait to just chill in my living room or bedroom, whatever it might be. You should be feeling that. And if you're not, there's probably a reason. Your living space doesn't align with you. There's things that just are out of place. We're going to look at that today and how you can potentially change that. And even if you're thinking about remodeling, new construction, I've got somebody that services the Hudson Valley of New York, and she's a full service design company that really takes care of everything, no matter what you're dealing with. And we're going to dig into that with Nicole Fisher. She's from Livable Luxury, and she's with us today. How you doing?
I'm great. Thanks for having me.
This whole thing where it resonates when you walk through the door, it comes personally because I moved 2 years ago. I'm not loving my living room area. It's okay. Not complaining. I'm always on the positive side. My bedroom, I'm into it. Like I can just lay there for hours and just feel like, yeah, this is me. When you're working with somebody, initially, Nicole, do you start with a conversation like what somebody's goals are, what their feeling is, their vibe? Do you pick up on that right away?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's really important to understand how people want to live in their spaces. It's not the same for everyone. And it's really important to have that dialogue when we first start a project. How do you like to entertain? How do you like to have holidays? How do you like to live with your kids or your pets or your families? We like to really understand your whole day, really. But how what you have right now is not working and how we can make it better.
Do you, in some regards, sort of feel like a therapist?
I get that question all the time. I am also a full-time couples therapist. I am constantly bouncing between two partners in a relationship, what one person wants, how one person wants to live.
Yeah.
Um, so yes, therapy is a big part of the job.
Oh, for sure. Like in that dynamic, it's a delicate blend
Yeah,
because it can get a little dicey what one wants, what the other one doesn't want, and vice versa. It's almost like you're the mediator. You have to hear both sides and kind of meet them halfway, I guess.
absolutely. It's really part of the job to take your interests, your aesthetics, your styles, things that you love from both parties and mesh them together and then make
Mhm.
it make sense. Um, then we go that next step and it needs to make sense with the architecture of the space. We don't want to go too far in one direction where you walk in and it just doesn't align. It doesn't make sense. So there's a lot of steps that go into kind of what that end product end up being.
I want to get to the design aspect in a sec, but you mentioned architects. So part of what you do is looking at a space and depending on what the goals are, depending on what the space is, I would imagine you might have to bring in an architect, maybe change a configuration, a wall, whatever. Tell me about that.
Yeah, we work with lots of architects on most of our projects. Um, we it really depends on the scope and the scale of that individual project. But when we bring an architect in, we're moving plumbing, we're moving electrical, we're moving walls. Perhaps the kitchen is not in an ideal space. Perhaps we want to enlarge a primary suite. There are there are many factors that go into needing the architect, and the architect's usually the ones who does those final plans for permitting, who really pass off that to the contractor and really um, does a little bit more of the technical work there.
So from that point, obviously, construction needs to ensue after the architect is called upon. Are you part of that whole process as well?
Absolutely. We love getting in there as early as possible. We think about things very differently from the way architects think about things. So they're thinking about them in usually a bit more of a symmetrical way. We think about it in a more livable way. So
Mm.
I like to not only make sure that it looks perfect, but also going back to that first thing you said, that it functions for you and how you live. Um, so if we're reconfiguring or redeciding how these spaces are used, we want to know how you like to enjoy your free time, how you like to watch a movie, how you like to play with your kids. So we want to make sure all those spaces have a home.
You're different. Your firm is different in that you also specialize in historic renovations, which I think is just really cool. It's so different. Let's
Yeah,
dig into that. Give an example of that.
absolutely. I mean, we live in the most luscious area for really old homes. Most houses in the Hudson Valley are 100, 200 plus years old. And what we see so much are these big developers coming in, tearing everything down, and just building these new products. And what we like to do is let the client know that that original structure can be saved. It can be lovely. It can be modernized, but let's work with the bones that you have here. The craftsmanship doesn't exist the way that it did back 100 years ago. The level of detail that goes into the moldings, into the stair rails, into the floors, the wide plank, original floors. You just don't see that the way that you do now. Those materials are so expensive. People don't put them in their houses when they're building. So when the house has good bones and good character and good detail, I love saving that. That's like the most rewarding process for us. And you just need to make sure that you have the right team behind you that knows what they're doing and knows how to peel back all of these probably 30 layers of paint and 30 layers of wallpaper that are on the walls and just refresh and revitalize, but still keeping that character and that element there.
I know what you're talking about because I grew up in Port Jefferson, New York, Long Island, and my aunt had a very old house. My grandmother lived there as well. And, my mom would be working, so I'd hang with my grandmother. It was one of those charming Victorians
Yeah.
from the 1800s. And as you're describing the molding and all of that, I'm seeing that home and that detail replay in my mind, even to the point where me and my sister used to go into the basement. Sometimes it was creepy, lots of spider webs, just going to say. But I would just walk around and just look at how it was done. There was like an old player piano down there. And just I guess as you get older, you appreciate those things
Yeah.
more because we don't have that craftsmanship today. When you were younger, were you like a history buff? Were you into history? Did it interest you?
Yeah, I was always into history. I studied some art history classes in college. There's just this element of where we live and how it got there. And, just looking around, to your point, not something I necessarily appreciated when I was much younger, but the older I get, the more I am in awe of, really where we are and how much history and excitement is there.
Mm. I'm going to digress for like 30 seconds here, but I've always had this affinity for the 1800s. I don't know what the deal is. I would look at right around the mid 1800s, you can see photographs, not drawings, like the real deal. And I
Yeah.
would look at the clothing and it would just intrigue me like, how did they do that? They didn't have the machines of today. The detail just would blow my mind. So did ancestry.com, which then led me to a genealogist. And just as a favor, she's like, let me trace your roots. I didn't really have a like close connection with my father's side of the family. So there are a lot of missing pieces there. She identified that my father's father's father came from Lithuania, didn't even know I was,
Wow.
and he was a tailor.
Oh,
And he worked his butt off, was successful, moved his family from Lithuania to New York City. And this person actually was able to find the street that he lived on, and he did really well as a tailor. So it's almost like in DNA or maybe reincarnation. I don't know what it is, but it kind of blew me away that I could stare for hours at black and white photographs of that time period. And I don't know why it resonated with me, but maybe there's a reason. So you might want to check into it, in terms
absolutely.
your history and your affinity. Where did this all begin for you, Nicole? Like just the redesigning spaces. Like when you were a little girl, did you love playing house, that kind of thing?
Absolutely. I mean, I loved playing house. I've always had this creative outlet, this creative element that I was always drawn to. My career started in fashion, actually, and I learned how to sew. I learned how to see how textiles work, how fabric should lay on a body or on, a piece of upholstery, how things look behind a camera. Um,
Mm,
and all of these traits really transition so easily to interiors, and it has helped really fine tune my eye and how I look at things with kind of my unusual background. But this creative element has always been deep within my soul, and I I'm always interested in learning more and doing more and finding different ways of being creative and really looking at the space. And what sets us apart really is that we don't have a very specific style. Every single thing is new and fresh. Every project is thought about in an entirely different way. And
mm.
we take each project to be really one of a kind.
The I find it interesting that you started in fashion, and in doing that, that's all great. Um, because if you continue down that road, you would be designing something for somebody, but you're now designing somebody's life, how they live their not just one article of clothing, which is fine, but their whole world. Like you're putting that all together. It's a big responsibility. What does it feel like when somebody's, it really is. What does somebody say? When somebody says to you, wow, this is what I thought, this feels so good. How does it make you feel?
It's the best feeling in the world watching someone come into their house. In the end, we are a full service turnkey um, company. So most of our clients just come in with suitcases at the end. It's been a long,
Hmm.
arduous project. It's been a long road, but they are usually very blown away by how it looks, how it turned out. There's only so much a rendering or a picture or photo can, show you. There's a lot of trust that goes into that, and to your point, we bear a lot of responsibility.
Mm.
Um, but the trust and that relationship is set from the beginning. And I tell them, if we don't have that relationship and have that mutual trust between us, then this is not going to work out. So I need you to trust that we know what we're doing and that we're going to give you something you're happy with.
Tell me about you have a store.
Yes.
What's going on there?
Oh man. So over the years, I have just become a hoarder of sorts. And we go all over the world, traveling to different trade shows, traveling to, we lean heavily on antiques and vintage furniture. And when I see something that works for a client, great. If I see something that I just love, I keep it in inventory. And this store kind of manifested from that inventory that I have been collecting over the years. Um, and then the second half of that is really how can we tap into the larger percentage of people that don't want an interior designer, that don't want someone coming in there. They want to feel their own sense of creativity. How do
Hmm.
we give them a little piece of what we do? Um, some some cool factor of their house, some unique element that makes their space a little bit better for them. So we kind of created this experience that is not really like all your home stores. Everything is really, most of the stuff is one of a kind. What you're finding is just little tidbits of things that we have found in our travels. Um, you get an opportunity to customize furniture or find wallpaper or customize rugs. A lot of things that you don't have access to without a designer. So it's just a small piece that we are giving to a much broader audience.
Now, you're all about livable luxury. Can you go to, or would you ever go to, you know, one of those retail stores? Don't need to insert the name, but we know the ones we're talking about here. And find something that can work, or is that like off limits?
No, we do retail all the time. I don't love leaning too heavily into it because that's not really why you hire me.
Hmm. Hmm.
We, um, but sometimes if it works, it works. Sometimes we have a little bit tighter of a timeline. Sometimes we have a little bit tighter of a budget. Sometimes people don't necessarily want to put too many dollars into their kids' spaces or a playroom or a basement. So those more practical moments will certainly lean into more of the retail spaces.
It's my understanding too that you can get a lot of amazing pieces, sometimes from Portugal, sometimes from Italy, wherever it may be. And it's really not as expensive as one might think. Many times, sometimes you got to pay for that shipping to
Hmm.
get it there. But, I'm just giving things that I've heard, I've seen people do. But there is something to be said about a certain piece that you have to say that, yeah, that came from insert country.
Yeah.
It's just a pride and a talking piece, I guess it might be, which is kind of cool.
Yeah. It's a very common misconception that things from overseas cost a lot more money
Yeah.
or antiques cost a lot more money. Honestly, that's not usually the case. Um, there are so many deals to be had. You just have to it requires a hunt. It
Mm.
requires some serious focus. I tell people if that's a journey you want to go on, be very specific of what you're looking for. Really know your scale and your dimensions very well. Take out that blue roll of tape and tape it
Mm.
on the floor and tape it on the wall. Because once you do pay for that exorbitant shipping and then it comes and you're like, oh, I wasn't expecting it to be that size.
Yeah.
That's when people have buyer's remorse.
And I guess the same thing holds true when shopping for antiques. Having a couple of missions in mind, as opposed to
Yeah,
just going in there, and now there's just, a million things inside a store, and it's just you got squirrel brain. Like, oh, look at this. What about this over here? I'm thinking you should have a goal, like when you walk into one of those places.
absolutely. Those places are so overwhelming and so highly condensed with
Oh yeah.
things that most people wouldn't even venture into one of those stores. But again, if you are very focused and know exactly what you're looking for, that process can be quite fun.
I want to share with everybody that you're based in the Hudson Valley, but you travel around. I don't know the parameters, but I do know you've done projects in my neck of the woods, sort of the Hamptons of Long Island. How
Yeah, of
far?
course.
How far will you go to do a project?
Honestly, if the project's right, we'll go anywhere. We finished a project in Denver last year.
Okay,
We travel really wherever a goal of mine is to tap into that European market. So that's certainly something that we're looking to explore.
sure.
But we travel wherever. If it's the right fit, then we'll make it happen.
Your company's called BNR Interiors, right?
Correct.
What's BNR stand for?
BNR stands for Buy Nicole Rose. This whole concept started with just I started writing, I started creating these smaller projects, and everything just ends up being um, a piece that was by me. Now that the team has grown,
Hmm.
it's not just me anymore, but that message still stands.
Awesome. Um, in the future, I want to go into specific projects. Maybe you can take us through, maybe even that design that you did in the Hamptons, wherever it might be.
Yeah.
Before we get there, what's your favorite room? Somebody says to
Oof.
you, "Hey, I need this to be done or redone." What kind of just pops up? I mean, obviously you work everywhere, but is there a couple of rooms, a favorite that you might have?
I love a primary bedroom. I think that room often gets pushed to the wayside.
Hmm.
Um, I don't think people put as much time and effort, even though it's probably the room that you spend the most amount of time in. And I think it should be something that you really love just crashing into. I think there's so much science behind sleeping better and feeling better when you wake up and all of these things that if you had the environment in which to do so, you would just function as a better human being.
I completely agree with you. And I said, when we started, my favorite room in my place is the bedroom. That's only in the last like 6 months. Why would that be? Because I'm always on the go. I'm always moving around. And I would talk to friends. It's like Saturday, Sunday morning. It's like 11 o'clock and they're still in bed. I'm like, what are you doing? You just killed a whole day. Half the day's gone. What are you doing in bed? And then I realized doing nothing is doing something. And it's like a recharge when you're hanging out and it's in your bedroom, just either watching TV, meditating on your phone, but chilling. And then I started that. And then I had that realization, wow, I love this room. Like this
Yeah.
feels good. My closets are awesome. It's almost as if, I'm walking into a clothing store because the way I inherited the shelving system and it looks like, my clothes are on display. Uh, but once you connect with a room, there's just something there. I don't know if it's the energy. Do you take energy into consideration? I know we're going a little woo-woo deep here, but is that
Yeah.
is that part of what's, your design?
Totally. We love to think about the energy, the flow, the feng shui
Yes.
of the room.
Yeah.
Your head should be facing a certain way or your feet should be facing a certain way. There's just
Well,
um there are elements. I don't necessarily talk about that with the client, but it is a part just, a part of our process to think about those things.
I totally got you there. And sometimes it's a little too deep for somebody, but
Yeah.
I realized this years ago. Have a friend, they're intuitive, they're kind of famous for their intuition. And they said to me, I had some boxes and things I was in transition. And they said, get those out of there. Do you realize that you're blocking the flow of energy in the room?
Mm,
And then I thought about it. I was like, yeah, because it feels weird when I walk into it. It just doesn't
yeah.
feel fresh and open. And there's something there. I'm happy to hear you you pick up on that. It took me a while to figure that out.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm. How does somebody engage you and your team? Let's say they're thinking about changing up their living space, maybe a remodel, no matter where it is. What do they do?
Yeah, the easiest way is to go to our website, bnrinteriors.com. You'll see a contact us button. We'll ask you a couple questions and we'll schedule a call.
Fantastic talking with you. I love your vibe. Like you're just
Likewise.
kind of chill and you're capable, and you do so much. I mean, if somebody goes on your website and take a look at the different projects and the variety of what you do, pretty amazing. Like you do some
Thank
cool
you.
stuff. Gotta tell you, like
Oh, it's awesome. Thank you.
I'll be living on your website for a while, checking that stuff out. Yeah, if you're looking to make a change, start the process. Again, share the website with everybody.
It's bnrinteriors.com.
Wonderful talking with you today.
Likewise.
Appreciate it. Looking forward next time we get together.
Yep. Bye-bye.
Thanks. We'll be right back.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.